Okinawa, Japan, a small island in the Pacific where people routinely live past 100 years old, not just alive, active, sharp, eating full meals, tending their gardens, laughing with their great-grandchildren. Scientists have been studying them for decades, trying to figure out what they're doing differently. And for a long time, the answers seem to be diet, or genetics, or community. But there is one specific habit that keeps appearing in the research that almost nobody is talking about. Something Okinawans do before every single meal, without exception, that has a direct and measurable effect on gut health, digestion, inflammation, and longevity. It is not a supplement, it is not a special food, and it will not cost you a single dollar. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what it is, why it works at a biological level, and how to do it correctly so your gut can actually start functioning the way it was designed to. Before we get into that, I want to ask you a small favor. This channel exists because we believe everyone deserves access to real evidence-based health information delivered with clarity and respect. If this kind of content means something to you, please subscribe, like this video, and activate the notification bell so you never miss what we share here. It genuinely helps this information reach the people who need it most. I have spent years studying the data on digestive health across different populations, and I will tell you honestly, nothing prepared me for what the Okinawan research reveals, because when you look at the rates of inflammatory bowel disease, leaky gut, colorectal cancer, and metabolic dysfunction in Okinawa compared to the Western world, the numbers are not just better. They are dramatically, almost incomprehensibly better. And the gut microbiome research tells us why. Okinawans carry a measurably higher diversity of beneficial gut bacteria. Their intestinal lining is more intact. Their inflammatory markers are lower. Their digestive enzyme production stays stronger well into old age. These are not small differences. These are the differences between a digestive system that is thriving and one that is slowly breaking down. Now, when researchers dig into the lifestyle factors behind this, they find a web of contributing elements. The traditional hara-hachi-bu eating philosophy, the consumption of fermented foods, the social nature of mealtimes. But threaded through all of it, consistent across the oldest and healthiest members of the population, is this one pre-meal practice. A practice so simple that when I explain it, your first instinct will be to think it cannot possibly matter that much. I want you to resist that instinct, because the biology behind it is extraordinary. To understand why this practice works, you first need to understand what happens inside your gut in the minutes before you eat. Most people think digestion starts when food enters the stomach. It does not. Digestion begins the moment your brain anticipates a meal. Your nervous system sends signals through the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in your body, running from your brainstem all the way down to your intestines, telling your digestive organs to prepare. Your stomach begins producing hydrochloric acid. Your pancreas starts releasing digestive enzymes. Your liver primes bile production. Your intestinal lining increases blood flow to prepare for nutrient absorption. This entire cascade is called the cephalic phase digestive response. And in most modern people, it is severely blunted. Here is why that matters. If your cephalic phase response is weak, if your body is not properly primed before food arrives, your stomach acid will be insufficient to break down proteins correctly. Your enzymes will be underprepared. Your intestinal lining will not be ready to absorb nutrients efficiently. The food moves through a system that was not ready for it, and it creates exactly the problems that plague so many people in the Western world: bloating, gas, heartburn, nutrient deficiencies despite eating well, inflammation, a disrupted microbiome. All of it downstream from a digestive system that was never properly activated before the meal began. Okinawans, almost universally in the traditional communities, sit down before a meal, and they are still. They breathe slowly, They look at their food. In some households, this takes 30 seconds. In others, a few minutes. It is tied into a cultural expression called itadakimasu, a word spoken before eating that translates roughly to "I humbly receive." But what researchers have discovered is that this ritual, this brief moment of stillness and presence before the first bite, is doing something measurable in the body. It is activating the parasympathetic nervous system. You have two modes your nervous system operates in. The sympathetic mode, fight or flight, which your body defaults to when you are stressed, rushed, distracted, or anxious. And the parasympathetic mode, rest and digest, which is the only state in which your digestive system can function at full capacity. Think of it like a switch. When you are in sympathetic mode, blood is being redirected away from your gut and toward your muscles and your heart. Your digestive organs are essentially running on backup power. Your cephalic phase response is suppressed. Your body does not think it has time to digest. It thinks it needs to survive. This is why eating at your desk, eating while driving, eating while scrolling through your phone, eating while anxious or rushed, all of it measurably impairs digestion, even if the food you are eating is perfectly healthy. Okinawans, without ever knowing the neuroscience, intuitively built the antidote into their culture. So, what exactly is the practice? It is conscious pre-meal stillness combined with mindful sensory engagement with the food. And I want to be precise about both of those components because each one has its own biological mechanism. The stillness activates the parasympathetic nervous system through slow, deliberate breathing. When you take even 3 to 5 slow breaths before eating, inhaling for 4 counts, exhaling for 6, you stimulate the vagus nerve directly. Vagal activation is the on switch for your entire digestive cascade. Stomach acid production rises. Enzyme secretion increases. Intestinal motility, the rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, normalizes. In people with chronic digestive issues, vagal tone, which is your body's ability to activate and maintain parasympathetic function, is consistently low. Improving vagal tone through breathwork before meals is one of the simplest and most evidence-supported interventions in gastroenterology. A study published in the journal Neurogastroenterology and Motility found that slow breathing exercises performed before meals significantly improved digestive symptoms, reduced bloating, and normalized gastric motility in participants with functional gut disorders. Now, I want to make sure you subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell if you have not already, because what I am about to explain is the part that most people never hear, and it is the reason the Okinawan practice goes far beyond just reducing bloating. The second component, mindful sensory engagement with the food, is equally powerful, and it works through a completely different pathway. When you look at your food, smell it, and think about eating it, your brain triggers the release of saliva. Most people think saliva is just there to make food slippery enough to swallow. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of its function. Saliva contains amylase, which begins breaking down carbohydrates before they even reach your stomach. It contains lingual lipase, which begins digesting fats. It contains protective immunoglobulins that are your gut's first line of immune defense. And, critically, the presence of saliva signals the entire digestive system that food is incoming, amplifying the cephalic phase response we discussed earlier. When you eat while distracted, salivary production is reduced by up to 40% compared to eating in a calm, present state. 40%. That is not a marginal difference. That is the difference between your carbohydrates being pre-digested correctly and arriving at your small intestine in a form your microbiome can process, or arriving partially broken down and becoming fuel for the wrong kind of bacteria, triggering gas, inflammation, and gut dysbiosis. Gut dysbiosis, an imbalance between beneficial and harmful bacteria in your intestinal microbiome, is now understood to be a root driver of conditions ranging from irritable bowel syndrome to autoimmune disease to depression. The gut-brain axis is real. The bacteria in your intestines produce over 90% of your body's serotonin. They regulate immune function, inflammatory response, and even cognitive clarity. When your microbiome is disrupted, nothing works quite right. And one of the most consistent drivers of dysbiosis in the research is poor digestive preparation, food arriving in a gut that was never properly activated to receive it. There is another mechanism at work in the Okinawan pre-meal practice that is rarely discussed, and this one relates directly to the gut microbiome itself. When you are in a parasympathetic state before eating, your intestinal permeability is reduced. Intestinal permeability, you may have heard this called leaky gut, refers to the integrity of the tight junctions between the cells lining your intestines. When those junctions are compromised, partially digested food particles, bacterial toxins, and other compounds that should remain inside the gut can pass into the bloodstream. This triggers a systemic inflammatory response. Over time, it contributes to chronic low-grade inflammation, which is now recognized as a contributing factor in cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, neurodegenerative conditions, and accelerated aging. Sympathetic nervous system dominance, chronic stress, rushed eating, distracted eating, increases intestinal permeability. Research published in the journal Gut has demonstrated that psychological stress alone is sufficient to increase gut permeability within hours. Conversely, parasympathetic activation protects the gut lining. It strengthens those tight junctions. It reduces the inflammatory signaling that damages them. Okinawans who observe this pre-meal stillness practice are, at a cellular level, protecting their intestinal lining before every single meal. Across a lifetime, the cumulative effect on gut integrity is profound. Now, I want to give you the exact protocol, not a vague suggestion to be more mindful. A specific, evidence-informed practice you can implement starting with your next meal. Step 1. Before you sit down to eat, put your phone face down. Turn off whatever is playing in the background. If you are at work and you cannot change your environment, that is fine. Close your laptop screen, push it aside, and face your food. Step 2. Before the first bite, take 3 slow breaths. Inhale through your nose for a count of 4. Hold briefly. Exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. Do this 3 times. You will feel your shoulders drop. You will feel a subtle shift in your chest. That is your parasympathetic nervous system engaging. That is your vagal tone rising. That is your digestive organs receiving the signal that it is time to work. Step 3. Look at your food for 5 to 10 seconds before eating. Notice the colors. Notice the smell reaching you. Let your mouth respond naturally. Do not rush past this. This is not a mindfulness exercise for its own sake. This is the biological trigger for salivary amylase release and full cephalic phase activation. Step 4. Take your first bite slowly. Chew more than you think you need to. The research on chewing is surprisingly robust. Participants who chewed each bite 30 times versus 10 times showed significantly higher levels of digestive enzyme activity, lower post-meal blood glucose spikes, and greater satiety hormone release. Okinawans in traditional communities eat slowly as a group with conversation. The pace of the meal is itself part of the medicine. That is the entire practice. Now 30 seconds of intentional stillness. 3 breaths, a moment of sensory presence, then eat slowly. The Okinawans did not design this as a health protocol. They absorbed it culturally, generationally, as a form of gratitude and presence. But the biology it produces is real, measurable, and backed by decades of research in gastroenterology, neuroscience, and microbiome science. Before I continue, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell. It means everything that this information reaches people who are actually looking for real answers. I want to address something directly. Many people watching this will have tried to eat healthier, more fiber, more fermented foods, more vegetables, fewer processed foods, and still struggled with bloating, irregular digestion, or persistent gut issues. If that is you, I want you to consider seriously that the what of what you are eating may not be the only problem. The how and the when, specifically the state your nervous system is in when food arrives, may be just as important. You can eat the most nutrient-dense meal in the world and absorb a fraction of its value if your digestive system was never activated to receive it. This is not alternative medicine. This is basic physiology that somehow got left out of most nutritional conversations. The cephalic phase digestive response is in every gastroenterology textbook. The role of vagal tone in gut motility is well-established science. The connection between sympathetic dominance and intestinal permeability is documented in peer-reviewed literature. What the Okinawan practice offers is a cultural container for activating all of it consistently or before every meal across an entire lifespan. Let me tell you about a patient, a 43-year-old woman, an executive, someone who ate what most people would consider an excellent diet. Lots of vegetables, quality proteins, minimal processed food. And yet she came in with chronic bloating, persistent fatigue after meals, and lab work suggesting suboptimal nutrient absorption despite her careful eating. We went through her entire routine, and when we got to the context of her meals, it became clear. She ate at her desk every single day while reading emails, while taking calls, sometimes while walking between meetings. She was never, not once, in a parasympathetic state when she ate. Her digestive system had essentially been running at half capacity for years, despite perfect food choices. We implemented the pre-meal breathing practice. 3 breaths, phone down, 2 minutes of quiet before every meal. Within 6 weeks, her bloating had resolved significantly. Within 3 months, her post-meal fatigue had largely disappeared. Same food, different state, different gut. There are a few additional elements from the Okinawan dietary context worth understanding because they compound the benefit of the pre-meal practice. Okinawans traditionally consume a high amount of dietary fiber. Sweet potatoes were historically their primary caloric source, not rice. Fiber feeds the beneficial bacteria in the colon, particularly species like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, that produce short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate. Butyrate is the primary energy source for the cells lining your colon. It is anti-inflammatory, or it strengthens the gut barrier, and it supports healthy immune regulation. When your digestive system is properly activated before meals, as it is when you observe the pre-meal practice, fiber fermentation by your microbiome is more efficient and more complete. Okinawans also consume significant quantities of miso, which is a fermented soybean paste, and other traditionally fermented foods that introduce live beneficial bacteria to the gut. The pre-meal parasympathetic state creates an intestinal environment that is more hospitable to these beneficial strains. Lower acidity in the wrong places, better motility, less inflammation, intact mucosal lining. The practice and the diet are synergistic. You do not need to adopt an entirely Okinawan diet to benefit. But adding the pre-meal practice to whatever healthy dietary choices you are already making will make those choices meaningfully more effective. Your gut is not a passive processing tube. It is an intelligent, dynamic ecosystem that responds in real time to the state of your nervous system. It communicates with your brain through millions of nerve fibers. It houses 70% of your immune system, It produces neurotransmitters that influence your mood, your sleep, and your cognitive function. When it is functioning well, when it is properly activated, properly populated with beneficial bacteria, and protected by an intact mucosal lining, everything downstream improves. Energy levels, mental clarity, immune resilience, inflammatory markers, even the rate at which your cells age. The people of Okinawa did not discover a secret superfood or a revolutionary supplement. They preserved something that most of modern life has systematically eroded, the simple act of being present and still before receiving nourishment. 30 seconds, 3 breaths, eyes on your food. That is the practice. That is the habit that shows up quietly and consistently in the lives of some of the longest-lived and healthiest people on Earth. You do not have to move to Okinawa. You do not have to overhaul your entire diet. You just have to stop before you eat. Let your body know that a meal is coming. Let your nervous system shift into the state it was designed to be in when food arrives. Do that consistently, and your gut will respond. Not immediately, but reliably. The biology does not lie. Please subscribe, like this video, and activate the notification bell. This kind of content takes real research and real care to put together, and every time someone subscribes or hits that like button, it helps us reach more people who are genuinely looking for answers. We are grateful you are here.